All right, so we have a lot of work to do tonight. I had a lot of things I had to do today. The shit hit the fan. I'm gonna put on Timcast. We had a big victory today, guys. So anyway, I was gonna put on Timcast now, okay? While I write away.
Order for Simone.
Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check 1 2 3.
Swing state congressional Democrats held a meeting to discuss Joe Biden refusing to quit, and they literally...
While I write away. Alright, good. So I know this is working. Okay.
Some states that are like moving from... Swing state congressional Democrats held a meeting to discuss Joe Biden refusing to quit, and they literally cried. Okay, I can't blame them, I guess. They're going to lose their races. Cook Political Report is now showing 6 states moving from I should say between 6 states. You've got some moving from toss-up to lean Republican, and some states that are likely Democrat moving to lean Democrat because the polling is so bad for Joe Biden. So we'll talk about that. Plus, we've got Jon Stewart, who came out and basically said Democrat primary be damned. They should have a convention where they should determine who will be the nominee. And this is what every Democrat and every young person has been complaining about for a long time. That the democratic process at the DNC, whatever you want to call it, is not actually democratic. They have super delegates who decide. And now Jon Stewart's advocacy is basically saying the political elites of the Democratic Party will get together and they will decide for you who your nominee will be. So we're going to talk about all of that, my friends. Before we get started, head over to mypillow.com. Shout out to Mike Lindell for sponsoring this show with MyPillow. You guys know Mike Lindell, and you know that MyPillow no longer has the support of these big box stores. So he's certainly been hit very hard by cancel culture. In order to counteract this, Mike's launching a $25 extravaganza, sponsoring shows like ours. Shout out. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just a problem solution one product company. Since then, with the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products, some you may not even know about. To get the word out, they're having this $25 extravaganza 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. 6-pack towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, $25. And for the first time ever, the premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, any size and loft level, $25, even king size. The amazing offer won't last long. Go to mypillow.com. Use promo code TIM. Shout out to Mike Lindell once again. And there's also a phone number. It's 1-800-925-9096. And of course, we are going to be hanging out with Mike at the RNC. You don't want to miss it. Go to timcast.com. Click the banner up top. I don't know if there's any tickets left. It may be sold out. But at the RNC, July 18th, we will have a live show with you guys hanging out in the audience, live Q&A, all that stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. Mike Lindell will be there. Luke Rudkowski will be there. Hannah Claire Brimolo. Libby Emmons, of course, will be there. I will be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, if you go to timcast.com, click Join Us, become a member to support our work directly, and you'll get access to the members-only uncensored show and call-in show, which will be coming up tonight at about 10 p.m. You don't want to miss it. It's good fun. And you, as members, you are what sustain the show and make it all possible. So if you like the work that we do, head over to timcast.com, click that Join Us button. But don't forget to also smash the like button right now on YouTube. Subscribe to this channel. Share the show with all your friends. Joining us tonight to discuss this and so much more is Rep. Tim Burchett.
Thank you for having me, brother. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming. Do you want to give a little background on who you are, what you work on?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's the only place in America where people do not speak with an accent. I graduated from University of Tennessee. My mom and daddy were Depression-era people. Daddy fought in the Second World War. My mama flew an airplane during the Second World War. She taught school. Daddy fought the Japanese all the way across the Pacific, went to China after the war, fought the communists. Then he went to the University of Tennessee and fought the communists there for 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he was dean of student conduct. Then he left in a little after 2000, both he and Mama are in heaven. They were beautiful, wonderful people, hardworking folks, and youngest of three. Daddy was always looking after the underdog, and that's kind of been my political deal. I had a $1 million business. I lost it. Got accused of taking toxic waste. It was in the mulch business. The EPA cleared me after I'd closed down one day, and after they closed me down, lost everything. Decided to run for the state legislature. I was the only person out of 99 House races that year to beat an incumbent in a primary.
Wow.
By about 2.5 percentage points. I knocked on over 6,000 doors. You'd take my shirt off, and I looked like a target, just red in a big white center. And every morning I'd wake up, and I would throw up, had a horrible taste of peppermint in my mouth. And my mama would fix me a turkey sandwich and a Sprite, and I would get out and go all day long and knock on doors again. And why I threw up was every morning I with the taste of peppermint, because you licked stamps back then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you remember
Wow.
those days. You didn't have the meter and all that stuff, and now your mailers really aren't as effective now with the internet and everything since Al Gore invented it. So
That's right, and email. We do have a lot I definitely want to ask you about with the SAVE Act,
Sure.
illegal immigrants potentially voting. And I definitely want to ask you about the Help America Vote Verification story, which has been going on for a while, so it should be fun. Thank you for joining us. We've got Libby hanging out.
And I'm Libby Emmons. I'm hanging out. I'm Libby Emmons with the Post Millennial and Human Events. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here too. I'm Hannah Claire Brimla. I'm with SCNR.com, that's Scanner News. I'm so excited you're here because you are in charge of one of my favorite events in Congress, which is the 15-minute Christmas party.
that is my idea, yeah.
It's fantastic, and I think everyone should Google that right now.
We went 16 minutes this year because we couldn't fit it all in.
Yeah, I
But
saw.
It stretched a little long last year, so we'll probably go back to 15.
Well, good. We got to get sent back to work. I love that it was the first place Rep. Anna Paulina Luna's son had ever met Santa. It's just
Yep.
hilarious. Anyways,
Yep.
I'm glad to be
Baby
here.
Henry.
Let's get started.
All right.
Baby Henry, love him.
Let's jump into the first story from the Post Millennial. Swing state congressional Democrats held meeting and cried over Biden staying in race, according to a report. Right before a Tuesday meeting with Democrats surrounding President Joe Biden's path forward in the upcoming 2024 election, a group of swing district Democrats gathered in a solemn meeting where there were, quote, actual tears, as Biden has not stopped in his campaigning and has vowed to run against Donald Trump in November. Some swing state district Democrats, I keep saying swing district Democrats in Congress, are feeling the heat that would be an already close race down ballot, according to Axios. The group of battleground district Democrats is one of the last remaining groups in what has been reported to be a disintegrating effort on the Hill to get Biden to bow out of the race. It seems very strange right now. It's split. There are some establishment Democrat forces that want Biden to stay. There are many swing district forces and certain Democrats desperately trying to get him to leave. What we're seeing in the polling is that internally with this league, Biden is way, way down. I'm wondering what you think Joe Biden should do. I'm curious. But more importantly, like, what's happening on the Hill with this? I mean, you're in Congress. What are you seeing?
Well, first of all, when Steve Cohen from Memphis walked out and they said, are y'all on the same page? And he said, we're not even on the same book. I thought that was that's typical Steve Cohen. I feel like politically, if we need to keep him in there. But for the betterment of the country, Chip Roy, 25th Amendment, take him out of office, because you figure Kim Jong-un, China, Putin, or whoever is doing their mischief. We've got over 100,000, as my daddy would say, red, but they're communist Chinese in this country that have come over our southern border, and we've got terrorists we know are here, terrorist cells that are here, and we have an inept Justice Department. And you combine all those things, and there could be a lot of mischief in 7 months. Now, the thought of Donald Trump being back in the White House probably will keep some of them under wraps, but still, that is a huge problem. And to think that if something goes down and this is the guy, the guy can't find the soft-serve ice cream machine in the White House, and that is who's in charge of the free world.
And he loves ice cream.
He loves
So
ice cream.
that's disconcerting.
That's what he told me at the State of Union address.
Okay. Well, I'm not so. I've seen a lot of people saying we want Biden to stay. We've made that joke like, hey, we love Joe Biden. But in reality, Kamala Harris is next in line, and she polls so poorly against Trump.
Yeah. She's awful. She's
So
awful.
She hasn't done anything in her term of office
But
to
if-
make herself
Well, except-
either
except-
likable or seem more competent.
Except solving the border situation.
Oh, well, of course she didn't.
Yeah.
do
She's done
anything
a
Solving.
great
with
job
that.
on that. If by solving
down
we
to the
mean making
northern
everything
triangle.
worse,
and not visiting.
bringing in 10 million.
I've spent more time at the border than she has,
But
I
if-
can assure you.
Well, her
If
office
Biden-
assured us it wasn't her
If
job.
if Biden steps down, she's next in line.
She is next in line.
And she does way worse. So isn't it in our political interest to say no Joe Biden?
Well, I don't know. The polling is what you're seeing. It's just there's that fly if you're going to get him.
Oh, he's on your. He's on your head. Yeah, there you go.
I got the taser ready.
Well, don't
Good.
tase the congressman.
Yeah, go tase the congressman. Go ahead. She's awful. There's no question. But the problem is we don't know how she will inspire. I think the middle America housewives, they hate her. I think we've talked about how the inner cities and the Hispanic folks are moving towards Trump. I mean, Trump's not going to win that vote, but he's making some huge headway into that. And I don't know that she would do that much better in those demographics, except for the in the black community. But in the Hispanic community, Trump just polls through the roof because of
When he ate the taco bowl, that was
yeah, well, that's
that
it.
really-
I took a guy out to lunch last week who's a Hispanic fella, and he's very successful. He loves America, and he said he's here legally. And I said, "What is it you like about Trump?" I said, he goes, "He's a billionaire, Tim." And I said, "Well, what about that?" And he goes, "He can back it up. He's cocky, but he can back it up." And and that's the truth. He can back it up. And they're used to all that crazy corruption down in there and the cartels and what's going on, and they love America, and they see how great it could be, much better it could be, and they're going to work within the system. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of the switch. But I don't think either one of them hold a candle against Trump.
You know what I think? There's a lot of things that divide left and right, Democrat, Republican, and there are tendencies and trends among each group. Typically, when I encounter Democrats, they tend to be people who don't know how to work. And I don't mean they don't know how to lift boxes or make burgers or sell insurance. I'm not saying that. I mean, they don't understand how to trade, market, generate value. Typically, they understand ask someone else. And whether that's welfare, which is the more insulting way to describe it, or they just apply for jobs somewhere else. They don't have the same mentality that you'll find more so in the country with conservatives, typically among conservatives, where they make value for themselves. And so this translates to Donald Trump never earned anything. His dad gave him the money. And it's just like, I don't care if his dad gave him $1 million or $10 million or $100 million. Increasing value. Trump gets $1 million loan from his dad to start a business. He surpassed his dad's wealth.
Yeah, it's a biblical story. The story about the father who gives his kids so much, and all of them, and one comes back and he just hid the money, and and he said, no, and then the one kid lost his butt, and the other guy rolled the dice and did something, and those were rewarded. So you're exactly right.
They look at Trump and they're like, he didn't earn it. And isn't that what Obama said? Like, you didn't build that? Was that one of his things?
That just turned my stomach. These people out here roll the dice. I know billionaires, legitimate billionaires that have started businesses from nothing. Pilot Oil started with a little gas station just over the line in Bristol, Virginia, from Bristol, Tennessee, Jim Haslam. DeRoyal Industries, Pete DeBusk. My buddy Teddy Phillips and his dad started Phillips and Jordan. They were in charge of the cleanup of the World Trade Center.
Wow.
And they're billionaires, literally. And yet they started with nothing. Teddy Phillips started with a pickaxe and a shovel cleaning a ditch. And literally, and so, but I would warn folks, though. I always remember when Clinton won the White House, and it came out that Clinton was a draft dodger. He evaded the Vietnam draft. He went to England, him and Hillary, he was a Rhodes Scholar for about 6 weeks or something. I don't know. I think he might have smoked too much weed over there and got kicked out. But there's that dadgum fly. And he, that's all right. And it came out he was a draft dodger, and he's running against George Bush Sr., who was, he was a Navy pilot, was shot down, picked up by a sub in the middle of the Pacific, and everybody was cocky, and we're going to win. I would warn people about Bill Clinton. Did you get him? I saw a spark.
I don't know, but I broke my taser.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
I hate that. Well, now we're going to suffer the injustice of that fly. But no, I just hope people aren't getting cocky and thinking, because it's not just the White House, the House and the Senate. If they get the House and the Senate, they'll impeach Trump day one. That will come forward, and Tlaib will be right up there.
And if you want to see any significant change on a policy level, I mean, definitely at the federal level, but also at the state level, you have to pay attention to what else is going on down.
Exactly. One thing COVID showed us, ma'am, was that parents were looking over their kids' shoulders when they were at home on that computer, thinking, "What in the world are my kids? They're being taught pornography," and then they go talk to their school boards, and they're labeled domestic terrorists by our so-called Justice Department. So I think that shows it's imperative that we pay attention to these. I don't like to call them lower; they're really higher. The school board, your city councils, your
Closer
county
proximity
commissions.
races.
Yes, ma'am. And that's where it really happens. The best thing you can come out of Washington is absolutely nothing. If we can just stop it, just stop this train wreck, America will figure out a way to solve the problems, and we overcome, our politicians. But unfortunately, it moves, but we do need to pay attention to those local races.
I think that's sort of the argument that the Democrats are making in way of trying to get some kind of movement from the Biden campaign. They're saying you will cost us our down ticket races, when typically I think because he's the incumbent, they'd be like, no, we're just going to pay attention to that and we'll get everyone in that we're expecting to. I mean, I almost like that everyone, including the Republicans, are on their toes, because I want them to have to earn every single one of their constituents' votes. I think it's easy to become complacent.
I feel like the liberals, I don't say Democrats, but the liberals understand the whole process a lot better. We win the White House, we get Reagan or whatever, we get Trump, and we forget about everything else. And dadgummit, and then they just hand us our lunch. And the Democrats, they're a whole lot like the Communist Chinese with their 100-year plan. They have a better plan.
And I think we talked about this a little bit before the show. You mentioned it. One of the things I've always been concerned about is sort of where does this MAGA, America First movement that was sort of sparked under Trump go? I mean, should he be elected in November, he could only serve for 4 more years unless we really change our government.
There's a lot of people coming up behind him.
There are lots of talented people, but there's not a clear number one. Now, we have 4 more years to figure that out.
We don't need a clear number one,
But we need something, right? Because even the people who are in
Bannon talks about how there's not just one head of this movement, how it's a populist movement, and there's a lot of people involved.
Which is great, but populist movements also can become shattered, right? I mean, populist positions are inherent so that they serve different interests. I think part of it is seeing that energy that exists right now doesn't die off in places that really needs it, because there isn't someone coming up. If there's someone strong coming out of Missouri or Tennessee, does Georgia have the same kind of energy?
Trump was gone for 2 years.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, what you really need are people in these local places taking charge and doing what they can. Like, look at Andrew Bailey in Missouri. He's really going hard and using all of the legal tools at his disposal to,
he's great.
Go after the people who are prosecuting Trump, to fight for the citizens of Missouri. I mean, he took it to the Supreme Court. You have a case right now in Tennessee. Tennessee is going to be in the Supreme Court next year fighting for literally our children's health and welfare in the entire country. That's going to be huge. I think we need to see a lot more red state attorney generals standing up. I don't know that we necessarily need one guy or one lady to be in charge, or
I don't think it's one.
number
I just
one. I think we need all of these people to actually stand up and put their, money and their actions where their mouths are, and get out there and do this fighting, because we see so much going on with the Biden administration and no one's willing to hold them to account. We were just talking before the show about how Anna Paulina Luna is really intent on holding Merrick Garland in inherent contempt. And I think that's very important to do. He flouted a subpoena. He's already jailed people for flouting subpoenas, Bannon, Navarro. And it's time to hold these people accountable. That's really necessary. And without our electeds doing that, where are we going to go?
Well, let's jump to the story from Fox News and get an update on this story. Rep. Luna planning to force vote to hold Garland in inherent contempt for refusal to hand over Biden her tapes. Republican Congresswoman said Sunday she expects the measure to pass. Now, she's not actually looking for the sergeant-at-arms to make the arrest, which I think should happen, but she wants to fine him $10,000 per day. But, Rep. Burchett, you're there. What's going on?
Yeah, I was talking to Luna on the drive over, actually. She and I are me and her and her husband and baby Henry are pretty close. And we talk about this all the time. And I was at the press conference, first one, and we were going to have a press conference in the morning, but we think we've kind of overdone the press conference. I think Luna is under the impression that she just needs to move the bill forward. But you got to realize a lot in our leadership in those circles do not want her to do that. They feel like she's pulling something from, the president and with the debate victory. But I keep saying, this thing is a moving target, and it's always, and you need to add on. If we've got things that they've done wrong, we need to expose them. We need to bring them forward. That's what we're here for. We've got 22 legislative days left, and if we spend all our time naming post offices, that is an issue. And as I told the leadership, I have a serious piece of legislation dealing with genetics and how the Chinese are stealing our genome literally and are developing biological entities to come after us. And, I can't even get it to move. And I told our leadership, I said, these dadgum post offices will name themselves. The one thing they have on us is we're not doing meaningful legislation. This is meaningful legislation. Let's pass it, send it over to Schumer. We ought to pass H.R. 2 every week. Just change it a little bit, send it back over to them, make it stronger. Border security, that's the issue. And that will be in the news every week.
Or at the very least, subpoenas.
100%. Yeah, bring them in. And let's enforce the law. Let's show America that this Justice Department is inept and corrupt.
I think my view is, unfortunately, a bit more dismal pertaining to what we're seeing with Congress. We'll get into the SAVE Act in a little bit. But even if, the SAVE Act, right, proving you're a citizen if you're going to vote, even if it passes the House, it doesn't go anywhere in the Senate because Democrats won't allow it to. And even if it goes to Biden, he vetoes it, doesn't go anywhere. Now we're looking at Merrick Garland, who has defied congressional authority. The DOJ is refusing to enforce the law as it's supposed to be, and nothing will be done about it. So while Steve Bannon is in prison and Peter Navarro is in prison for defying congressional authority, Republicans get nothing done. And it is always seemingly this way. I mean, probably most conservatives will tell you it's been this way for decades. But at least for the past decade, every single time an opportunity comes up, the Republicans say, no, slow down there. We better not. And then nothing happens. We're looking at Merrick Garland, who is engaged in a criminal activity, verifiably, easily provable. He defied congressional authority, a co-equal branch of the government, challenging and trying to hold the executive branch to account. And the leadership for the Republicans in Congress are like, I want to see the Sergeant at Arms arrest Merrick Garland. If Steve Bannon's going to be in jail, I'm not talking about revenge or retribution. I'm talking about equality
justice
under the law.
Well, and the language is so similar. You have Merrick Garland saying that he can't turn over the Her tapes because of executive privilege. Well, that's why Bannon couldn't give up his communication with Trump. It's the exact same thing. You have Garland saying, that he can't give up the tapes now because he can't turn it over because that would chill the ability of the Department of Justice to conduct investigations in the future. And you had Luna in her conference just before the break saying, if our subpoenas are toothless, then we have absolutely no power. So it's like the same language.
The J6 committee had tons of power.
Yeah.
Forcing people to testify and threatening them with prison over this.
And in prison, and now they're in prison. I mean, Navarro was in prison, Bannon's in prison, know.
But House Republicans' position is basically, we don't want this to be in the news cycle, and we would rather focus on whatever's going on with Biden.
That's exactly right. They do not want to take anything away from the debate and the debacle. And of course, with this, they're telling, and the spin, of course, is that, well, it's just going to prove what we already know, what we saw on the debate screen, that Biden is inept. But the point is the defiance of the law. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily what's on that. I think what it's going to show, I think the reason they're laying down on the train tracks, I think it's going to show just how inept he is, and that he's got either attorneys or advisors in there in the meeting telling him what to say. And also, I think some of the things could have been left out from the transcripts. That's what I think. There's a lot of that.
Didn't they
in
already
there.
say that the transcripts were edited?
Redacted.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I mean, I think to a certain extent, proving what we already know.
And that's a lot, and that's illegal too.
That's illegal too.
Yeah, completely.
And
yes,
you
ma'am.
have also the FBI tampered with the Mar-a-Lago seized evidence.
Yeah, with the cover letters.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think to a certain
And the order of-
proving
of
what we already know is kind of key right now. I mean, all of the conservatives that I know are like, yes, there is something wrong with Biden. He seems different. He's not performing as well. But having it on stage for everyone to see seems to have had a really big effect on independent and more progressive voters. I mean, I think to a certain extent, the same thing is the case with seeing Merrick Garland face the same kind of consequences of Steve Bannon for allegedly committing, what is being told to us is a crime. If we have to answer this question of executive privilege, we should do that, or they should have to treat their players the same way they treat ours.
So in 2020, on May 29th, thousands of far leftists in D.C. ripped down the barricades around the White House, firebombed the White House grounds, torching a guard post, and set fire to St. John's Church. The photo, the aerial shot of D.C. shows smoke rising up around the White House.
It was shocking to watch that.
Shocking to watch, and the Republicans did nothing. Mm-hmm. So one of the challenges I see is
our former leadership. Yep.
I can certainly understand this argument where it's like, well, no, hold on. We're winning politically because Biden's fumbling. Yeah, I'm sorry. I look at the media and I'm like, they're doing that on purpose. They intentionally did this. You're never going to convince me that in 2020, when Atlantic wrote, "Stay alive, Joe Biden. Democrats need little more from you than your corporeal presence." They wrote that. They were concerned in 2020 the man was going to die. He was campaigning from his basement. His health concerns have been around since before he got elected in 2020. Now, they're saying, oh, we had no idea this was happening. And the Republican leadership saying this is a good thing for us. Going along exactly with the Democrats' plan and their allies in media with their plan. What I see is a lot of people are concerned that after the 2020 insurrection from the far left at the White House, where they forced the president into an emergency bunker and tried to burn down a historic church, Republicans did nothing. There was no Summer of Love Commission. The worst riots this country had seen in 5 decades. Oh, you got me. The worst riots we've seen in 5 decades, and nothing was done. Not a thing. I said, where's the 529 Commission? Why aren't Republicans creating a commission to force people to testify as to why all of these law enforcement across the country stood down and allowed this to happen? Why was the president forced into a bunker? Why isn't the mayor of D.C., Nancy Pelosi, or anyone else involved in this jurisdiction, why are they not being called to answer these questions the way Don Jr. was, or Steve Bannon was, or Peter Navarro was? Why is Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon now in prison over this? And once again, the Republicans are like, we'll do nothing. For me, it's hard to say beyond the Democrats are bad. Why should people vote Republican down ticket? Now, Donald Trump is a bit more fierce, people like that. But congressional Republicans, they earn very, very little. They never get the job done. There's a small handful that we cheer for and that we respect. And when Rep. Luna says, this is the order of operations, right? We said, here's a subpoena. They denied it. We said, you're in contempt. They say, so what? We say criminal referral. They say, so what? We say inherent contempt. And now leadership is saying, nah, we don't want to do that. So nothing gets done. Mm-hmm. I have very little confidence that if the Republicans win anything in November, anything gets done. And you had a lot of prominent personalities in the midterm saying, even if Republicans win, they will do nothing. And while we have seen some stuff from a small handful, like I've mentioned, we like what Luna's doing and Matt Gaetz as well. We are not seeing anything near the level of what Democrats did with the J6 committee. You had Raskin go before this committee and broadcast on television that I personally was advocating for people to go down on January 6th, which is a fabrication and outright lie. Mm-hmm. This guy's going on and lying about me. And I say to the Republicans, hey, can any of you do anything? And they say, no. So the challenge now is we hear this every time. In the midterms, why did Republicans barely win a majority? Well, unfortunately, the narrative is, and the reason why the Libertarian Party has so many right-leaning individuals is because even if Republicans win, they're not going to do it.
Same reason that in England and France that the conservatives were being thrown out in droves because they ran on it and then they didn't produce. I can't argue with anything you said. Going back to Luna's original proposal, though, why we need to move forward with that. Americans want their pizzas in 30 minutes or less, and that's about our attention span. And we need to. This will not carry us to the convention. This will not carry us to the election. We need to keep piling on because there's so much out there, so much corruption. And we just go ahead.
I was gonna say that's why you're in office, to take action.
Right, and here's what happens with these people. There's that stupid fly. Is it a fly or you think it's a drone?
CIA
Being
drone.
bugged for real.
It's one of those. It's one of those green flies, so they're extra aggressive.
Yeah.
Oh, is that it?
I don't know. Anyway, we got
So
horse
the green ones
flies. and
are extra aggressive.
they'll come at you in the barn. They just assign to you once you walk in. But Republicans are gutless. Here's what they do: they go home, they throw the red meat out the Reagan Day or the Lincoln Day dinners and or the MAGA dinners now, and they say, "This is what we got to do. We got, Nancy Pelosi. She's making 60% return. I mean, there's people making 300% return on their stock. Go to the Wales site and look it up.
Unusual Wales.
Yeah, and she's just kind of right in the middle." And I mean, there's Republicans that are doing that, and there's Democrats, and it's all just feeding at the trough. I manage my stockbroker manages my $6,000 fund that I have very well, and that's about it. But anyway, we continue down this path, and then we come back to D.C., and what do? We vote us down the river every dadgum time. You get a 3,000-page bill, you read to page 32. Oh, that takes care of all my projects back home. And I grease a few lobbyists on K Street or whoever my wife and or girlfriend would work for, and the whole program. My daughter works for this firm. We're going to take care of them. And then they quit. And that's why we're $32 trillion in debt. We had $1 trillion every 100 days, and we failed to address it. We keep kicking the can down the road. We say, when we get the power, we're going to do this. Well, guess what? We got the power now, and we're not following through.
Is it likely to pass that Merrick Garland will be fined?
I think it's a toss-up.
I feel like it only takes a handful of defectors.
I just take 2 or 3, and then and you got to look at the numbers too. If there's Thomas Massey, his lovely wife just passed away, and Brian Mass' daddy died, so those 2 are gone. I mean, they're not here, and it just life happens. Somebody's going to get sick. Somebody's going to happen. So we're 3 or 4 people in the majority. Somebody forgets to come vote or something, or they're hung over in their office or whatever. I mean, there's 435 literally.
And Republicans have a majority by 4 seats or something.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
I mean, it's
So-
extremely narrow. I remember this was happening with the Mayorkas impeachment vote, that there were, 3 people who were adamantly against voting for the impeachment. And on the day of the first vote, a couple people who were in favor couldn't be there. I think maybe Andy Biggs, I can't remember who. So that the day that they could come back and vote, it changed things. Not that it went anywhere in
Right.
the Senate, but it's such a narrow margin that really you need a lot of consensus to get things through. Does the Republican Party the Republicans in the House tend to be cooperative, or do you feel like there's a big division between them?
There's a lot of division, and Speaker Johnson has to take into consideration just every day. He could go to the floor, and we could lose. He would lose the speakership, literally.
I mean, you famously got checked by Kevin McCarthy during the last speakership battle, so I always felt like there was some kind of contention there. But
Yeah, well, I voted him out. I was
Yeah.
the one that voted him out. I guess there
job.
was.
yeah, but he really did I mean, I don't know what happened, but it looked like he kind of
We loved that so much.
Yeah, NPR was the ones who reported that. Actually, the lady from NPR. She's a very nice little lady, and I know they're liberal, but she's always standing there with her little tape recorder and her mic, and I always want to make sure she gets because when they talk to me, she was sort of off to the side, and and everybody knows her, and so I was talking to her, and then that happened, and I remember she said, "I've never seen that happen before," and I was like, "What the heck?"
And he denied it, right?
Yeah, because I fell right into her. And
He
it
said,
was-
maybe we bumped elbows.
well, he said we didn't, and then he said, "Well, it's a tight hall." And then maybe we touched elbows, and then by then it was out of control. What was going on?
A lot of people were coming down on Matt Gaetz. I think what you guys did in voting against him was the right move. I love that,
100% the right move.
and it burned $1 billion in IOUs for these lobbyists, these corporations, and that feels good.
Well, and also you got to remember, we had gone home a month before the big budget vote. So all we did was they came back a week to decide that, and we should have been there a month working that out. We haven't passed a budget in over 30 years.
Wow.
And I mean, just imagine your business, your church, your synagogue, your charity or whatever didn't have a budget. It's mind-boggling, and that's what we do. We pass these continued resolutions, and so what that does, it continues the bad policies before and loads up your junk. We have departments and projects and things that aren't even there anymore, Tim, and they still get funded. And where does that money go? Our Pentagon can't account for over $500 billion in assets. Never passed an audit. Yet what do we do to punish them? 20, 40 new billion dollars. I mean, the war pimps at the Pentagon are going to get theirs no matter what. And
Yep.
you look at what happened when I voted against every dollar going to Ukraine, and dadgum, when they gave them our missile defense system, what did we have to do? We had to, by rule, and we should have, replenished ours. And guess who owned stock in that? Members of both parties that served on that committee that knew about that ahead of time, and they ended up, magically, they just owned stock in that company. It's just, it never stops. It never stops. And the American public, though, needs to get out. They need to get out, and they need to start getting involved in these primaries and putting people in there that believe in this country.
Let's jump to this next story. We got big news. Cook Political Report. Today, we're making 6 changes to our electoral college ratings. Arizona, toss-up to lean Republican. Georgia, toss-up to lean Republican. Minnesota, likely Democrat to lean Democrat. Nebraska, second, likely Democrat to lean Democrat. New Hampshire is likely to lean Democrat. And Nevada is a toss-up to lean Republican. This, of course, following the disastrous debate and Joe Biden's performance. So here's your updated 270 to win electoral college map, showing Republicans sitting at a likely 268 already. If this polling holds based on Joe Biden, Trump needs win only one more state. In fact, if he somehow managed to win one district in Maine or in Nebraska, which he wouldn't, then he wins. He gets 270. But Trump, it looks like he's doing well I believe he's doing well in Pennsylvania relative to Joe Biden. And then he's slightly up in Michigan and Wisconsin, but that's a little bit closer.
Wisconsin has always been, during this whole cycle, Wisconsin has been pro-Biden.
Mm-hmm. And now it's like 0.5
that's
down.
Yeah.
The labor, I think you need to look at labor. The labor bosses hate that. All they want to do, they're like the old state legislature I served in Tennessee. A lot of those old guys, all they want to do is get through the next election. All they want to do is get through their retirement. But their members, I know a lot of Teamsters. Heck, the Teamsters have endorsed me in the past. When I was in the state legislature, you see them at church on Sunday. Yeah, they'll drink a little beer. You'll see them out hunting and fishing with you. They're with their wife and their kids, and they do not like that national scene. And I think you're going to see some of that peeling off in some of these states like Michigan, like Wisconsin. Wisconsin, they make Harley Davidson. There's nothing more American. It used to be nothing more American than that. I've owned a few in my life. And so I think you're going to see a change in that. The head of the Teamsters is going to be speaking at the Republican National Convention. The Teamsters were a Republican. You remember the history of the Teamsters with Hoffa. They got Hoffa out of jail, and then they endorsed Nixon, and they were considered sort of the Republican Union more or less. But you're seeing more and more of that, and Trump knows how to deal with them, brother. That's his deal.
Well, he's been working with unions for years in construction.
He's a tough-talking Yankee from New York.
Yeah, he knows exactly how to do that.
Yeah, he knows how to do it.
My bigger concern with Michigan and Pennsylvania is going to be the shadow campaign that we will likely see from the Democratic Party, that Republicans will be unable to stop. And even if they file a lawsuit, the Supreme Court will cower with their tails between their legs and refuse to take up their responsibility to answer these questions.
Just like they did last time.
Exactly.
They refused to take up the case of, what was it, Texas suing Pennsylvania?
The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So I'm concerned that with Michigan and Pennsylvania, maybe Wisconsin had issues as well. So these are the 3 states right now in the polling that Trump needs to win. Well, unfortunately, Pennsylvania is acting in violation of its own state constitution with universal mail-in voting. A lower court ruled, and the Supreme Court of the state said, no, it's fine. Clearly, it is in defiance of how their constitution operates. There was no answer by the Supreme Court as to whether or not this state was breaking its own rules as per the U.S. Constitution. The state legislature shall decide. So we had a bunch of states that were in dispute, and the governors decided we're going to do we're going to run these elections the way we want. Supreme Court refused to answer, and now we don't have these answers, and the next election is 4 months away. My concern is we will see tenfold what we saw last time. Already, Missouri has filed a lawsuit citing original jurisdiction to the Supreme Court over New York's prosecution and gagging of Donald Trump. That's the first one, 4 months out. I think it's very likely come October, we're going to have 6 or 7 more. I don't know. Probably way more than that. But I imagine by the time the election's happening, these all the courts are going to be buried in lawsuits and they're going to refuse to answer them. So what do we do? Because, you know, I think you mentioned earlier that Democrats know the process better or something to that effect.
Yeah. Well, they wrote the rules on a lot of these things.
Democrats are not playing. They're not playing the game as to the spirit of the game. They're playing the rules to win. So
100%.
they're, you know, it's a little shady here and there, and everyone understands that's not what an election is, but we're in line with how it was written down, so it's allowed. That's democracy, they say. So what do we do come November if we can't get definitive answers, or worse, if these states are clearly in some kind of contention over the results, but they say Biden anyway?
I talked to our previous speaker about that, and they told me, oh, we got, you know, pat me on the head, basically, and told me, we got this. Don't you worry about it. And the reality is we don't have it. The voter harvesting, for instance, that process to me is crooked as a dog's leg, but it's legal in some states. Not legal in Tennessee. We don't have to deal. We have the cleanest elections in the country, but it's legal in some states. You know, if that's the rules, let's play them. Let's play them. Let's get in there. And politics is a contact sport, brother. It's not a game of touch. And we need to get aggressive on these things. We need to devote the money. And we did not devote the money to these these state Supreme Courts where people ran for those offices, not where they're appointed, but they ran for those offices. Oh, we don't want to dirty our hands. You know, we've got to quit with this so-called compromise. This compromise is what gets us in trouble. Every time we're in the minority or in the majority, we always talk compromise. The Democrats didn't talk compromise when they were in the majority last time. Pelosi, that word never came out of her dadgum mouth.
No, they put people in prison.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing. And we've got to play hardball. We've got to play tough, and we don't. And we allow this thing to go on. We allow the money changers, the chambers of commerce, those crowds, the billionaire ruling class who do not care about us. They're always going to be on the tarmac greeting the president, no matter who the president is. Always remember that.
I think the problem, though, is Republicans are 5 steps behind every time. Yep. And so in 2020, this is fascinating because
they're playing chess, we're playing checkers.
That's right. And it's funny because the meme is Trump is playing chess and the Democrats are playing checkers. Well, certainly not the case. In 2020, you know, we're looking at all the economic data. You had Moody's Analytics, for instance, saying the economics of Donald Trump suggest a victory in 2020 and a very slim possibility of a major victory, you know, a huge margin. You take a look at the results. Bellwether counties in favor of Trump. You take a look at just the general predictive factors were very favorable for Trump, and he still lost. So the Republicans are thinking, we're doing X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C, and that's what gets you the presidency. And then for the first time ever, I think I could be wrong about this, but a president has never won Ohio and Florida but lost the election. There's something like that. And what was it? How many bellwether counties are there? 18 or whatever. Trump had almost all of them, 95%. Still lost. And there's a variety. And I think the reason is fairly obvious. Democrats weren't playing this game of let's convince people to vote for us. They were playing so we win when we get the most cards with names written on them. Let's play that game. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump's playing the game of I did good, vote for me. And so many people did. He got more votes than his previous election, and then a president who's gotten more votes second time has never lost. But Democrats went ballot harvesting with universal mail-in voting. Now Republicans are saying, hey, if they're doing this, we should too. And Democrats are doing something entirely different that we don't know about. Some suggest it's going to be mass illegal immigrant voting.
Well, that's a big part of it.
Trump suggests was already happening in 2016. Mm-hmm. But here's my question. If Democrats win, how do you actually check to see if there was illicit voting going on? You won't, because
there's no checks. There's no fail-safes at all.
SAVE Act will not pass the Senate, and you know, again, you're asking me to. You're asking the Justice Department, which is, as I've said, crooked as a dog's leg, to do the right thing, and they're not going to do that. They're going to protect the swamp. They're going to protect the ruling class, because that's who put them in power, and that's how they know how to keep that in power. And that's why we have to put so many points on the board. All my dear evangelical Christians and sportsmen decided, 20 million of us decided to stay home last election because of a mean tweet. And I've said, we got to put so many points on the board, they can't steal it from us. We have to, it has to be so overwhelming, Tim, that they cannot do that. But we've got to energize. We've got to make sure our base is there. You got him. You got him. I'd take him out. I don't think he's playing possum. If he comes back from that,
This fly has been terrorizing us for some time.
There you go. That's all guts that time. Good job. If he gets up from that, he deserves
I
it.
think I broke my taser.
Yeah. Sorry, dude.
Well, it served its purpose. Anyway, continue.
But anyway, we need to put enough points on the board so they can't steal it. We've got to energize folks. We've got to make sure that their votes count. And I want to give you an example, if that's okay. Can I give an example?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was a bill, I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm a Christian. I'm not a very good one. I'm on the forgiven end, but I'm a born-again Christian. And so I called the head of the Southern Baptist Convention, and I went through the rigmarole. Finally found it was this guy down in Texas. It was a few years back. And there was a bill out that I thought put into place. I'm not a lawyer, but I heard enough talking of this chess game. It put it into place where it could set a precedent where, say, a preacher was saying something that they could label as hate speech. Well, they could go in, take their tax-exempt status, deadbolt. That's what I think they're up to eventually. Well, I called the head of Southern Baptist Convention, and I explained this to him. And I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, dude. I am remember big cowboy belt buckles? You know, they got a big piece of turquoise right in the center. I'm in the turquoise of that. I live in the Bible Belt. You know, there's probably 80 or 90 Baptist churches in my county and the surrounding area. So I called the head of the Southern Baptist Convention. I say, hey, this is going on. I did not ever hear from a single Baptist minister or anybody on this thing. And he said to me, Tim, that happened, you know, in like around November or December. And honestly, that's our busy time of the year, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas. I said, preacher, you're not going to be busy when the government comes and puts a deadbolt on that dadgum door, because that's where it's headed. You know, and I said, you guys, that's no excuse. And I lit up a bunch of preachers. All I did was make people mad. But at some point, we've got to realize we got to quit, you know, I don't want to be anybody call me out on Facebook. I don't want somebody at work. I don't care. We got to go in there. First Amendment's a great thing till you say something somebody doesn't like.
Yep.
You know, let them have it, man. Stand up. These people bully us. You know, I was in college in the 80s in the Reagan Revolution, and I had a psychology professor, and I would argue with her every day because she was always attacking Reagan. She's always, and I know her name, and I've Googled where she's at now, and she's at some do-gooder private school. But and I would walk out of there, and every day somebody would say, man, I'm really glad you took it to her, man. I really agree with you. I was like, dude, girl, why didn't you help me? You know, why didn't you jump in? Well, you know, I just didn't want to. I'm a little shy, you know. And that's the way we are, man. And good folks, honestly, they're too busy. They're raising their kids. They're taking them to soccer practice. They're taking them to football practice, whatever. They're cheerleading or whatever. And they're too busy to get involved. And that's why we lose these elections.
I want to jump to this website and talk about this story. Something that we and many others have been covering since around March. This is the Social Security Administration's Help America Vote verification system. And we have you here, Congressman, so I'm curious your thoughts on this. Are you familiar with HAVV, Help America Vote verification?
Yeah.
So we've tried this for a while. Choose a week, and this is going to show you people who have registered to vote who do not have an ID and the outcomes. In the week ending June 22nd, 2024, the state of Arizona had 47,928 attempted registrations with no ID. 11,374 did not have a match in the system. 13 were dead. 36,536 were found to be single matches and alive. Now, we don't know how this is happening or why it's happening or why the numbers are all different. What the SSA says is that this is only for when someone makes a registration attempt and has no ID, the DMV or the MVA, whatever you call it, can submit their name and the last four of their socials to see if they're in the system. How is it that Arizona had 11,374 attempts where the name and the SSN did not match? Something doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, 47,000 people in a single week? That's a lot of people to register to vote in a single week. Maybe that's normal. But you look at other states, California, 2,000. Why are we seeing such large numbers? Now, this has been going on for a long time. 211,419 in the United States, with 35,982 having no match. Certainly, some of these people may have written down the wrong number or the wrong name, or the name was spelled wrong.
Look at Tennessee.
Typed in wrong. Tennessee, 0.
Yeah, of course
At
it is.
0, 0, 0 across the board.
State is a great. Trey Hargett's the guy's name. He does a great job. I served in the legislature.
Oh, West Virginia is also 0.
Missouri.
Virginia.
Take a look at this one from Missouri. This is, what do we pick? April 13th. Missouri has 46,938. Now, Texas, which also has insane numbers, 24,000 coming back with no match. And hold on, 4,492 are dead. Now, how did nearly 5,000 people who are dead submit registrations?
Just that sudden plague, you know?
There's been no answer for this.
No, there is.
And it's not even being brought up by members of Congress. I don't know what the answer or the solution is. Perhaps there needs to be, I think if you look at February 7th, let's see, maybe February 17th. I'll try and find this one because it's been a while since we covered this.
Yep.
Missouri has 23,253 dead people attempted to register. The answer for this that we get is that they're doing voter roll cleanup. Totally fine. Okay, sure. But then how would you have 6,000 non-matches on your voter rolls? Doesn't seem to make sense. Texas denied this and said, we don't know what you're talking about. We did not register this many people. It's not happening. This, the SSA website for HAVV says it's only for when someone registers. So it's perhaps it's being misused. We're hearing a lot about the SAVE Act, illegal immigrants voting, but you'll notice it's a lot of these border states. Missouri,
Border states, 100%.
Arizona, 31,000 attempted registrations. What we know is that when someone comes to this country illegally, the Biden administration is granting them work visas really, really quickly, which grant them Social Security numbers. Let's say that these individuals don't have any idea how this country works, don't know what the laws are. So they go to file their paperwork for their work visa or for their work permit or whatever, and they get automatically registered based on their information, whether they wanted to or not. In several jurisdictions in Maryland, in California, New York attempted this, got shot down. D.C. does this. Non-citizens can vote. So what happens?
Allegedly local races only. But
That's what they say.
Allegedly,
But,
yeah.
York, too.
now here's the point.
That's not
They're going to have to register to vote, right?
correct.
And then when they go to vote for their local elections, they're given one ballot, right? And then they end up voting on everything.
That's correct.
If we do see non-citizens vote en masse and Democrats end up winning, there will be no audit. There will be no fact checking, and there will never be a way to figure out if this really happened or not.
In Bush v. Gore, they pre-filed lawsuits. What happened in the last election, President Trump's people, there are 5 law firms in the country that specialize in this, that are the king, you know, they're not
the go-tos.
They're not $45 an hour attorneys. They come in. And in Bush v. Gore, they had pre-filed lawsuits in a lot of these areas, Chicago, areas we knew that there'd be stealing of elections in the past to keep it from happening, the hanging Chad, all that crazy nonsense. And